Good morning. I'm Robin Trostel. I'm the coordinator at Karn Senior Center, and I'm here this morning with Art Bohanan, and he's been gracious to agree to meet and talk with me today. And Mr. Bohanan, I would just like for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got into the line of work that you were in for so many years.
I'm Art Bohanan. I'm a sixth-generation Sevier Countyan. I knew at 14 what I wanted to do in life, and I followed my dream. At 16, I took a home study course. At 17, I was working for the Sevier County Sheriff, working crime scenes and taking pictures and fingerprints and dispatching on Friday night and Saturday night. And during high school, if they needed someone to do something, the sheriff would come get me out of high school. And 3 weeks after graduation from high school, I was working for the FBI in Washington. I was recruited right out of high school. And this has been my life. Almost 60 years of it. And still going and still learning and trying to help humanity.
Now, I know you became sort of famous, I guess you might say, and not only with the KPD, but just the entire law enforcement realm with a technique that you invented. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, our local remember back to the Zuban case, the bodies in East Knoxville. I thought there should be fingerprints on the skin, and I started a process to lift fingerprints off of human skin, and I used super glue. I would heat super glue to 410 degrees. It would vaporize from a liquid to a gas, and I'd blow the gas on the skin. It would develop the fingerprints on the skin in about 30 seconds. And I went ahead and got a patent for that in 1993. And a couple of years later, it was used on a little girl in New Jersey that had been kidnapped, raped, and murdered. And the the FBI got the suspect's palm print off her inner thigh. And that's the most famous case right now is Megan and Megan's Law. That is, you have a right to know if a child molester lives in your neighborhood. And they just gone worldwide, sold them all over the world. And it's done real well because it helps solve a lot of cases.
I know that you do some work in grave location. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I determined in 2015 that the human body has an energy field in it. And since you can't create or destroy energy, when you die, the energy field goes in the ground with you. And I have a device to not only locate that energy field that's left in the body, but also I can determine if a male or female, adult or child's in the ground. And so far we've located over 3,000 unmarked graves. And a couple of weeks ago I located a grave from 1804 in Borge Creek, which is going to be a significant find, a very historical find. And we've been with other counties to try to locate human remains of missing people. And we actually got a signal from a man who went missing in Morgan County. We picked up his signal about half a mile away, but he was not dead, but he was really close. So that really blows our mind that it acts on humans alive. We get no false positives, not even permits to sue. It responds only to human.
So, Mr. Bohanan, we're going to switch gears here a little bit. I have seen some of the posts that you made on Facebook about 9/11, and I just wonder if you would tell us about the events leading up to 9/11.
September the 9th, on a Sunday, my wife and I were in Bar Harbor, Maine on vacation. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened, just terrified something horrible was getting ready to happen. And I told her, and we loaded up and we checked out that motel by 4:30, driving south. And when it got closer to daylight, we called family. Family's all right. We could not figure out what in the world was happening or getting ready to happen. Was it a dream or just something that was going to happen in the future? So on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, we were in Winchester, Virginia at Cracker Barrel. And my brother called and said a plane just hit the World Trade Center. And I said, yeah, probably one of those little tour planes. So we talked about that. In just a few minutes, we were back on Interstate 81 coming south, and he called me and he said, no, the second one's hit. And then I knew that we were hit by terrorists. And then we had the Pentagon, and we had the one in Pennsylvania that go down. And Fred Burry of Burry Funeral Home called me. He was our deputy commander for the Southeast for the DMORT team. The DMORT is Disaster Mortuary Operation Response Team, a reserve team with the U.S. Public Health Service to respond to disasters to recover human remains. So he called and said, "Where are you, Bobo?" And I said, "Interstate 81 South." He said, "Put the pedal to the metal and come on." He said, "We're going to New York, probably tonight or tomorrow." And came on home, and the family were there. And he called and he said, "We need a van." Of course, everything was closed down, everything closed tight. So I called one of my friends, Hope Clark at Knox County 911, and he called Blount County and got budget to get us a van ready for September the 12th. So September the 12th, about 5 o'clock, I met Fred Burry at Burry Funeral Home, and he took me to Alcoa at the airport and picked up a van, came back by 6:30. The first 6 responders from Tennessee were going north with no direction as to where. They said, "Just head north, we'll tell you where to go sometime later today." And we had picked up a 7th, who was Marilyn Carter from Georgia, our teen nurse, and she went with us. So Fred and I took turns driving, and about noon, Fred got a call to go to Stewart Air Force Base in New York, about an hour and a half from New York City. That was a staging area. So when we got there, it was Air Force Base. Security was tight, no planes flying. It was just, what are we facing? Can we handle it? So many thoughts went through all of our minds, and sometimes I'd be driving, look in the rearview mirror, and the faces on my team members are just, what are we into? So we got to Stewart Air Force Base. They put us up in a big hangar, 800 of us, first responders, and it was just horrible during the night. I mean, just horrible. Every noise you could imagine was going on. People getting up to go to the bathroom, falling over the cots. We were elbow to elbow, head to head, head to foot. And so we finally got to clearance, and they put us up in the Marriott near LaGuardia Airport right across the street. And so we drove down there, and we got our assignments. And my assignment was to work at a Newburgh on Vesey Street. And that night, Fred walked out with me, and I got in the back of a New Jersey State Trooper patrol car, and they told me to tighten my belt. And somebody got in with me, but I cannot remember who that other person was. I have tried and tried, and my mind's blank on that one. So here we go, flying down through New York, over the sidewalks, through yards, through grass. It doesn't matter. They wanted to get us there, and I told the trooper, I said, "Buddy, I don't have to get there that fast." He said, "We have our orders to get you there as soon as possible." So he knew where I was going, and we went through several checkpoints. I mean, lights and siren wide open. And all at once he cut the siren, and he said, "This is where you get out." And it was dark. It was real dark. No lights on anywhere down lower Manhattan. And he said, "Walk up the street toward the lights." And that's ground zero. So I got out, got my backpack. I always take a day bag, threw it across my shoulder, and started walking in the dark toward the lights. And got up about 2 blocks from ground zero, and on the left it had a temporary morgue. And somebody broke the plate glass out of the store, and they had a temporary morgue in there. And I walked in, and your police officers were there, and they were very standoffish. And one of them finally asked me who I was and what I was there for, and I told them I was just retired from Knoxville PD, and that was okay. I just went down there. So they said, "Go up to the right at ground zero. On the left is a 2-story Burger King." Said, "Go upstairs, get any supplies you want to get." Said, "It's all free, it's already paid for." So I walked up that way, and I walked up the steps, and just, oh my gosh, it was unbelievable, just unbelievable. The sights, the sound, just, and before I walked up, I looked right into ground zero, which I was standing in part of it, and then this big crane with a basket on it, huge basket, and had a man and probably was an Irish setter, the best I could determine. It was dark, and they was slowly going over the rubble trying to find anybody alive. Of course, he couldn't find anybody alive, not at that point in time. And so I walked on up the steps, and the man said, "Get what you need, buddy." So I got gloves and a dust mask and a plastic hat and just a few little things like that, because I had most everything I needed. And I was sitting there. I looked at the wall, and there was chairs with first responders, dirty, grimy, just, oh my gosh. And they were sitting in those chairs, and all at once one would get up on the right and disappear down the hall, and everybody moved closer. And it took me a minute to realize that they're going to the bathroom. It's long lines, and I just stood there for a while and went back down and stood in the rubble and watched the big crane slowly getting bits and pieces from ground zero. And it had big old floodlights on it. And then I noticed a man on each side of the big track hole with binoculars watching the dipper in the pile. And all at once somebody yelled, and it stopped. And the motor cut down. I thought it cut off, probably went back to idle because I couldn't hear it. And I seen a man scrambling up on the heap. And when he got up there, he kneeled down and saluted something. I couldn't see what it was, but I knew it was human remains. I knew he was probably one of the first responders because the uniform was easy to spot. And he yelled and brought a basket up and gently put the remains in the basket and brought it back down, put on a gator. And somebody yelled attention, and he brought a flag and draped over the body. And here we were walking down the street, and everybody was crying, weeping. And for somebody I never knew, I knew they gave their life to help somebody else.
So, Mr. Bohanan, how long did you actually spend up in the New York area after 9/11?
I was there 8 weeks, 59 days. We worked 12-hour shifts. And at the end of the 12-hour shift at 7 o'clock at night, if something was going on and we had human remains, we finished it before we stopped. And sometimes that went into 16, 18-hour days. And I worked 6 weeks in the medical examiner's office, collecting DNA samples from human remains. And I was happy if I could get a piece of red muscle as big as my little finger, or a bone as big as half my little finger. And I was happy when I was searching through what they brought in to find a finger for fingerprints or teeth, anything to speed the process up. Now, we had forensic odontologists, and they made a lot of identification based on 1 or 2 teeth, the fillings and all that. And we had, FBI had a fingerprint man there, but every fingerprint that he identified, he asked me to verify it. That's a second opinion. And it was just a challenge and an honor to be there, but it took a toll on all of us. Right in the middle of that, Flight 587 went down in November, and we had to work that one too. Went down in Queens. And they brought the human remains in from that one too. So we were working 2 disasters at one time. The World Trade Center plus the plane crash, and we had to keep them all separate. And I mean, I seen everything from an eyebrow to most of a body. Over 20,000 body parts were brought in, human remains, and one that we identified was one lady was blown into over 200 pieces. We identified with DNA. Now, I didn't work with the families. We had funeral directors that did that because they work with grieving people all the time. If I'm with somebody crying, I'm gonna cry with them. But they worked with the families to collect DNA and everything they could to identify the people with. So it was a challenge, and everybody worked together. The forensic odontologists, the fingerprint people, the family assistants, everybody worked great together.
Are there any thoughts that you'd like to leave us with from 9/11?
We need never forget, and especially the first responders who gave their life to help somebody else. 373 firefighters, 71 police officers, and others who responded to assist another human remain died. 5 of my close team members are dead. Ron Boone, Chapel Hill, North Carolina; Burt Brooks, New Bern; Fred Berry here in Knoxville; Terry Dabney in Kentucky; and Tom Shepperson in New York. And actually there's another one, Mike Finch in Columbia, South Carolina. They all responded, and they're all dead as a result of the work there. And we need to never forget those. And most of us have health problems. 90% have health problems, and it continues, but it was an honor to be there, and I've been blessed to do it, but it's I'm having to suffer for it.
Mr. Bohanan, I see you've written several books. Could you just tell me a little bit about those books you've written?
Well, I've written actually 8. The first one could never be published because it was a terrorist attack during a UT football game. That might give some nuts some ideas, so I'll never publish that one. I've written my own story, The Prince of a Man, and I'm writing a series of books on Henry Bohanan's journey. He fought in the American Revolution. He came into Sevier County about 1790, and I'm a 6th generation from him. And I've always wondered what he did. So in my mind, I have created a whole story around Henry Bohanan and what he might have done during the American Revolution. And I'm up to book 7 now, and the research has been tremendous in it because more soldiers died of smallpox during the Revolution than of bullets. And Henry studied herbal medicine with the Catawba and the Cherokee Indians. So he's helping out doctors during the American Revolution at this point in time. Plus he's fighting looters that went off. If they found a man had gone off to war, they would burn his house and steal everything he had. And sometimes they'd rape and murder his children, wife and children. So I'm getting into that now. And actually one group from North Carolina, HARP, H-A-R-P-E, excuse me, they were this vicious, very vicious. And they finally ran them out of North Carolina. And of all places, they settled on Beaver Creek here in Knox County and changed their name to Harper. So we're going to get into that later. So there'll probably be 10 or 12 books in the series plus spin-offs from it. And I have to do something, I can't do nothing. And it's a lot of fun to create this because some days I sit down and just shut my eyes and I can see it all happening in my eyes. I just have to type real fast to get it down on paper. So it's fun to do. It gives me something to do, and I have a good readership, I really do, of it.
And where are these books available?
Amazon or from either one.
Well, Mr. Bohanan, thank you so much for being here today and speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me.